Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Marketing Mindset Mastery Radio Talk Show with your host, Bree Mason. I cannot wait to bring up our guest this week. His name is Noah Healy, and he is a designer from Charlottesville and the owner of Coordisc. Hopefully, he'll be able to help me pronounce that on the show. And he is going to be giving us a really different way to learn how to network with people and making connections with others. So he's going to talk about networking today. And I cannot wait to bring him up. However, we do have the top tips of the week. Sorry, my phone has decided to do the pings and the dings. You know how it is. So I am going to just remove that distraction. So my apologies. So anyway, let's go on with the top tips of the week and then bring in our guests this week. So last time we had a discussion on, talking about the marketing strategy and tactics. We even discussed a little bit about the marketing funnel. And I want to get some clarity and give you some specific clarity on certain stages in the marketing funnel. So this week, we're going to talk about build awareness through your marketing funnels. And awareness is the uppermost stage of the marketing funnel. So that's where you are trying to attract your potential clients using attractive lead offers that solve a specific problem for them. So you really need to know what's going on inside their minds. What are they struggling with? And then be able to provide that solution. And it could be quick tips or it could be a long explanation, but these are some of the examples of a lead offer. They can include blog posts, articles, infographics, promo videos, value videos, podcasts, workbooks, social media snippets, like little, tips and stuff. And then, oh my gosh, the list is endless. You can go on forever. But you just got to pick the top 3 to 5 ones that resonate with you and use that as your lead offer and just work on creating a compelling copy for that for both social media and your email list. So there you go. Then the next step is lead generation process. We'll collect those leads from your lead magnet because you will have them in a landing page and collect their contact information, usually like their name and email. And then what lead generation does, that process will continue to nurture them into your marketing funnel because you want to have an end result in mind, right? And so the next step actually is to send your audience to an end result. And that will be the next stage of your marketing funnel. And that could be like send them in the form of an email campaign and telling them, oh, you can go and collect this offer or go and join my social media group or schedule a call with me or in some cases, like go to a social media send them to a social media campaign, which could lead them to your next event. You can also do a media mentions to people and talk about what it is that you want them to do in that process on how to work with you. You can also go and send them to a webinar or a podcast, or like I said earlier, a discovery call. Whatever that end result is, you can even send them to your website to collect an offer. Whatever that end result is, that's the next step to work with you. Okay, you're building that. The awareness you're building that know, like, and trust factor and developing that connection with your audience. It's kind of like the warm-up steps. So, and you need to make sure that you have clarity on keeping the end results in mind when you're dealing with a call to action. And then, like, for example, would you like to it basically is to help you guide your audience on the next step of working with you. That's what this whole awareness process is. And it's crucial to building the know, like, and trust factor with your audience and build in that connection. You want to be able to create a real connection. So I'm going to offer my audience for this week's show and probably for several other shows as well. And that is, I am a business mindset coach, and I actually help empower women professionals as well as men, but business professionals specifically. And I help you as a business mindset coach with um, overcoming the fear of imposter syndrome and other, you know, common business fears. And I also help you to create a business model that you love to do and working with ideal clients. So if you need help with figuring out, we can assess where you're at and figure out where your marketing strategies are, where some of the hiccups are that are causing you to, not move your business forward. And that way we can schedule time to see if it's something that where I'm a good fit for you as a business coach. And where I can help you, because I have helped several students have successful businesses and are now making money with their business and having repeat clients. So there you go. I'm helping you to get repeat clients. And if you want repeat clients and want to be able to, fix the holes in your business, let's get on a free 30-minute discovery call, have a quick business assessment and see where you're at and how we can help you. My number, or the way you can schedule a call with me actually, is calendly.com/Marie V. Mason. So I want to sit there and say, welcome back to the Marketing Mindset Mastery podcast and talk show with your host, Marie Mason. And our guest today is Noah Healy. He is a marketplace designer from Charlottesville, Virginia, which is in my hometown, by the way. And he is actually the owner of Coordisc, and which I think is the correct pronunciation. And today's topic is on networking, and he's going to give us a really wonderful approach on how to do some networking steps. So, Noah, I just introduced you. Can you take it away and let's find out some things about Noah? So, Noah, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Welcome. I can't believe we're already recording this. It always sometimes seems to take a little longer than I plan to get a guest to record, but that's why I pre-record our shows now, because we want that flexibility in our day, right? So anyway,
Right.
so my biggest question is, I want to make sure I pronounced your business name correctly. Is it Coordisc?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the first syllable of coordination and the first syllable of discovery.
Perfect. And before I even jump in my starter question, I'm going to ask you, could you tell us a little bit about, like a short little snippet about your business real quick? And then I want to jump into a few questions.
Yeah, sure. So Coordisc exists as an IP vehicle. That's intellectual property. I have this invention that I'm working on patenting, and I want to license or source it outside the United States to get it into operation. And this invention is essentially a financial institution. It's a way to do price discovery for commodities that is superior to the kind of open market operations that we've been using since the Renaissance.
Oh, wow. Cool. And what are the commodities that you give us an example of a commodity?
Uh, well, one of the things that's sort of interesting, I guess, is that the markets that we currently use were actually developed for trading physical commodities and then were adapted to trade financial commodities. So physical commodities are things like wheat, rice, corn, oil, coal, natural gas, electricity, also steel, copper, wood. Those are all physical commodities. But things like sovereign bonds, so like the debt the United States sells in bonds, are all split up. So there's, bond number 1 and bond number 3 aren't different from each other. They both have the same maturity. They're both going to pay off the same amount if they're part of the same issue. Stocks, particularly common stock, also has that property. it's become more common recently, like Facebook, for example. Mark Zuckerberg owns an incredibly tiny fraction of Facebook, but he actually controls the company. He owns most of the voting shares. But for companies that are sort of more blue chip traditional, that doesn't really exist. And so, if you own 51% of the shares, then that's what it takes to control the company, as we've just seen with Twitter, basically. So each one of those things is in fact a commodity. The subset of those that my markets are focused on are ones where the buyers and sellers are disjoint groups. So stocks, equities are not a good use, generally speaking, although it could be a reasonable way to operate a public offering, an initial public offering. Um, Bonds, particularly up at the blue chip and sovereign level, would be a good fit, and physical commodities also have that trait. Um, People who own coal mines generally aren't buying tons and tons of coal off the marketplace.
That would get
If they,
expensive.
right, yeah, if they need some, they can take some out of their own production stream. And so that's the end of the market that I'm mostly focused on.
Perfect. Thank you for that and an explanation. And then I was going to say, I always like to know behind the scenes, like what makes people choose a career path. And I have some interesting answers over the last couple of years being a podcast host, but I'm just curious, what made you choose your career path?
Well, this one chose me, actually.
I get that a lot.
So my hobby is mathematics, and in particular, the mathematics of algorithms. Kind of less interested in solving problems than approaches to solve problems. And so I was working on a communication problem of filtering out noise on networks to create
Mm.
consensus positions. And the approach that I came up with had a certain market orientation, but then I sort of had an intuition that it could have a very strong market orientation. And so just on a lark, effectively, I decided to see what would happen if you built a marketplace out of this approach. And then after I had done so, um, I realized that from a position of algorithmic analysis, I had something that was far superior to what we presently have. Uh, and then I started some historical digging and looking more closely at what the things that we have, how they actually work. And that's when I tripped over the problems that exist at the algorithmic level with the approach that we actually have with our modern technology. And at that point, sort of my fate was sealed, because like more or less everyone else on the planet, I live off of these things. And they are broken, and I've got a solution. So that's my career now.
Yeah, you always one of the things in the marketplace is when you find a need and you can figure out a solution and then you can market that solution, then you've got a viable business model, which it sounds like what you have accomplished. So congratulations, because um, we definitely need solutions to this crazy world. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
So
I would very much say so. The institutions that we've been using, are not robust to the technology that has developed in the last couple generations. And so we can expect those institutions to fade out or be pushed out, sort of depending on how hard they decide to hang on. Um, and and we aren't guaranteed to develop replacements that work. And if we don't, it's going to be pretty bad.
yeah. Plus, if people, it's the old It's the old phrase, if you don't bend, you'll break. So if you don't learn how to pivot and make changes and adjust and focus and refocus, your business is going to flop. And that's just the long story short of it.
Well,
Um,
yeah. One thing to, I guess, think about is that in Europe, Europe used to be princes and kings, the crowned heads of Europe, and so on was a phrase. Um, there's really only one ruling kingship in Europe anymore, and that's Liechtenstein. And the King of Liechtenstein more or less mandates the Bill of Rights. He's got free speech and all of those things, which of course, if you were to present like Louis the 14th or Henry the 8th or any of those other previous crowned heads of Europe with a proposition that this is what they should do to their citizens, they would have looked at you like you had two heads or possibly taken your own. Um,
which
but
you really don't want.
no, I'm happy where my head is at the moment.
Yep.
But it turned out that in order to operate a government in a civilization, you have to extend those basic human rights in an industrial economy. And the one king that did that got to keep being a king, and all the other kings that didn't really didn't get to be
Suffered.
kings anymore, right? um, that's the same sort of problem that we're currently confronting. We don't know what the sort of basic values and rights and that are going to underpin the institutions that can actually work are yet, but we know that some of the ones that we're using are wrong. Um, and so we got to figure that out, and then it's a choice. The institutions can bend, as you say, and offer up the services that are actually required, or they can break and be replaced.
Exactly. And now I know that you like to explain new ideas and concepts to people, and I am a big component. I'm a big believer on the brainstorming process. I personally use a lot of that in my consultation calls for my clients for Liberty Virtual Solutions, where I help them create their podcasts. Well, use in the planning stages of it, basically. And so I do a lot of that brainstorming process in there. And I do a lot of that with my students and my business academy students, plus in all of my other adventures that I do, including brainstorming topics each week for this podcast and my book ideas. We're always brainstorming ideas. So I want to ask you, how do you explain a new idea? Is it to your clients? Would be a good example.
Yeah,
Or pitching it, or is it pitching it to for getting the patent? I mean, whatever perspective you want to take.
sure. Well, yeah, so explaining the truly novel uh, is a real challenge because people mostly think in terms of analogies. And when you're in a truly novel space, uh, the analogies will fail,
Mhm.
um, because people don't have experience with something that's truly new. If they did, it wouldn't be truly new anymore. So um, that actually is the analogy that you have to capture sort of first to get people into that space. And that's why I talk so much just so far in this conversation about historical illusion and long-term historical illusions in many cases, um, because uh, there's a normality bias in humans, that tomorrow will look more or less like yesterday, and that's a good and necessary thing. And in fact, tomorrow does more or less look like yesterday most of the time. um,
Like the Groundhog Day movie. Just keeps on repeating.
well, yes, so sometimes quite a lot. And many people live in places that if you live in a Mediterranean climate, you don't even have seasons to speak of. I have family in California, and they talk about the weather that they experience, but I live on the East Coast, and I've been there, and there's no weather there. It's it's just there's some minor seasonal variation in cloud cover is what they're experiencing,
Yeah.
and they think of that as weather. Um, but if you're living in the right circumstances, things really can sort of be same. Um, and so the real challenge is to get people thinking in terms of major changes, and that's where uh, when you're making your analogies, historical allusions or sort of large scale changes for people, acute injuries, uh, or or big physical changes like puberty. You need to draw on those sorts of experiences and analogies to give people a sense of what sort of change that you're talking about, because you're stuck with analogies basically. You can't just dump what's in your head in somebody else's head, um, and unless
Like in
people.
Bewitched, they used to the Samantha Carter was or whatever her name last name was. She was so good at planting the seeds in her husband's head and it made him think that it was his idea. And we could do that to a certain extent, but at the same time, you really have to have a different approach when it's in business, correct? I mean, and this just to clarify.
Yeah, yeah, kind of hypnotizing people. That's I didn't watch much of Bewitched, but I Love Lucy's been in reruns since my parents were kids,
Mhm.
and Lucy was also she always seemed to have some
Same
kind of
concept.
trick. Yeah, it's like, oh, Ricky's gonna get something. Now it's time to, like, plant the seed so that I
Yeah,
get it too.
right.
Um, that kind of approach is very common in normal communication, I would say.
Right.
um, but uh,
Business is a little different.
in business it's different, and again, that's not going to help you in bringing new ideas to the fore. You really do have to make a mess and sort of accept that it's going to be a big thing, and that and and to embrace that, and get past the fear of sounding crazy, because if what you're talking about is real and you talk about it in real terms, then that comes through and you don't sound crazy, even when you are talking about something as foundational as changing economics.
Brilliant. No, that's true. And then one of the things I've learned about new ideas or we have so many products and services over the span of time. There's aren't a whole lot of super brilliantly new ideas. It's just revisions of old ones. So keep that in mind. Your new idea might be a latest and greatest, not necessarily you specifically, but I'm just saying in general for anyone watching. Your new idea may be great, but keep in mind there's so many things out there now in the marketplace that were kind of over and did it. So having yours stick out in the marketplace, I wanted to ask you, how do you stick your products out, services out there in the marketplace? And then I wanted to talk about making connections because I know that's key in marketing. So how do you make your product and service stick out in the marketplace would be the next question.
Okay, well, to your point about how nothing is new under the sun, that was actually the first thing I did, was embark on a deep historical research on ideas like mine to see whether or not they existed, because it is easy to come up with an idea that somebody else had, uh, you know 5 or 50 or 500 years ago. um, In mathematics, that last one is particularly frequent, and if it's going to be depressing, then you're not going to last very long in mathematics, because lots and lots of smart people over the millennia have piled up a lot of really good ideas. Um, so that, I think, is the first thing that you do to make sure that your idea sticks out, is do the research, figure out where your idea actually fits into the history of what you're doing. Um, this shows up when you're patenting things as well. There's an entire section of prior art, and the existence of prior art does not invalidate the possibility that you could get a patent. Um, there are the majority of patents are refinements of ideas that are already in there, but you add this extra thing onto it, and then that extra thing is patentable. Um, one of the most uh, important patents from a legal perspective is was actually on basically sticking the air inlet to your steel furnace next to the chimney. When efficient steel manufacturing was first developed, people believed that cold air was the best way to go, presumably because cold air would be denser, and so you'd be able to get more oxygen in one go, and so that would be better. But eventually, this guy worked out that actually hot air is better, because the the hard part of the steel making is that the temperature should be correct, and so the hotter the air is going in, the less fuel you have to consume to keep the entire thing hot. And so, using the waste heat from the chimney or whatever of the furnace to pre-warm the air, and then feeding that in, made the entire system massively more efficient. Um, and that got patented in England almost 200 years ago.
And we still
Uh,
use it today, I believe.
and
So
yes, yes, reverse flow systems are a key part of the manufacturing process of all sorts of things. Um, and a good little trick to keep in mind if you're doing systems design. There's all sorts of opportunities to, pre-warm, pre-soak, set the table, as it were, to make things work more effectively.
good deal. Well, I did want to ask you a question. I mean, if I were to go into the marketing world and patent and find a patent for something, for example, I'd like to be able, I have a book out and children's book out, and and I'm working with creating a video. One of the future goal plans I have when the funds are there for that is I'm working with a video game designer to help me create a video game for the book. It's going to be a reading curriculum video game. So would something like a video game design be something that would need to be patented?
Typically, something like that would operate under copyright law.
Okay.
Um, so there's several different IP is sort of tossed around as a term, intellectual property, but there are different kinds, and they are very, very different from each other. Um, and not just in the sense that, like, the way that you own real estate and the way that you own your car is a little bit different, but sort of like they're like as different as the way that you own real estate and the way that you're responsible for your children, almost. It's really, really different conceptually. So the sort of three big public pieces of IP are patents, trademarks, and copyrights. And then there's trade secrets, which don't get talked about so much. Um, in general, a published piece of intellectual property, like a game or a book, what you're looking for there is copyright. And what that will stop people from doing is literally copying it. So if you're
Protects
selling,
it protects
yeah,
your content, basically.
right.
Okay.
Now, what it protects is sort of just your content. So if I were going to write an epic series about a childhood wizard who was engaged in, battles against the forces of darkness while he was in middle school. Um,
Could you give me just a moment? I have to pause this real quick. I got a knock on the door. I don't
okay,
know who it is. So give me just a moment. So let's keep on rolling.
sure.
So,
So it under those circumstances where it's that might sound like Harry Potter to you, but
mhm.
it also sounds like uh, The Dark is Rising, which is Susan Cooper's series of books
Hmm.
on that, or the Young Wizards books that Diane Dwayne, or Dwayne, however her last name is pronounced, wrote. Each of them decades before Harry Potter came out. Now, on the other hand, if I were to write the epic of Harris Smith and the Professor's Minerals, then J.K. Rowling's flesh-eating lawyers would, turn me into a smoking hole in the ground. Um, but that kind of thing exists with copyright. Um, Trademark is much more specific, and applies essentially only to what you have actually trademarked, and then you sort of have to vigorously defend it. But it too has some intriguing wiggle room. The company Apple uh, had to actually go cap in hand to the Beatles because the Beatles were Apple Records.
Hmm.
And so the Steves, Job and Woz, had to go, beg on bended knee to be able to use Apple for their, kooky little electronics firm. And the critical bit was that they had to promise up, down, and sideways that there was no earthly way any of their technology could ever be used in any way to transmit music. And so when the iPod came out, Sir Paul uh, sued, and there was an undisclosed settlement for some presumably ungodly amount of money, because the only reason Apple was allowed to be named Apple was because the Beatles said that they could, on the condition that they wouldn't be a music platform or a company.
Wow.
Uh, and of
And
course,
it's changed direction, of course,
that's
then.
yeah, that's the foundation of the Apple Renaissance, was turning themselves into a music company. Um,
That's just too, you see, that's where pivoting would make a good sense, you know?
right. Right. So yeah, we're the kinds of things you're talking about. Books are very traditionally covered by copyright. Games are very generally covered by copyright as well. Patents are for mechanisms that have some sort of like physical advantage or disadvantage, that you can be trading off against something else, and they exist for things that are more general. So um, the the thing I was describing you for, the pre-warmer, the guy that invented it basically bolted this sort of big empty box next to his uh, chimney, and would sort of pull the bellows out of that air that was in the box next to the chimney. It was warming up. So somebody else basically built a pipe array to use that as the heat exchanger, and was like, well, I'm not violating the patent because, look, you've got a box and I've got pipes. But then, the court steps in and says, yeah, but we're talking about heat exchanging and pre-warming the air, and you're heat exchanging and pre-warming the air. So, go pound sand. Um, so those are the sorts of differences among those big
Perfect.
ones.
Thank you for that. And I apologize for the interruption, but one of the beauties of working from home and being able to pre-record podcasts is you can accommodate an interruption. So I appreciate the audience for that as well. So then I think the last question on the patent stuff is, when creating a business model like yours or even like mine. I have like a consultants agency, event consultant agency for Liberty Virtual Solutions. We already talked about my book, and then I have a business academy where I help students and I do coaching calls and both privately and group. So would you recommend that service-based industries be patented, or is it more of a product-based, more like my book and video game kind of thing? Is just some examples for that. So which would you recommend to be patent?
For patents, you really need to have a product. There needs to be something. Now, that thing could be a computer device, essentially, and that's the entire basis of sort of systems patents, is that there's some procedural device that is quicker, that's using up less energy, that's making it work better. But patents are very rooted in the physical, and so unless your service is functionally changing the physical efficiency of a system, um, don't expose yourself to the cost and bother of the patent system, because the copyright system is actually super trivial these days. Essentially, copyright is automatic. Um,
Right.
so
So for my
it
book, for
didn't used to
example,
be.
right. And so my book, for example, would be better for copywriting than and the game as well. But in the rest of my stuff doesn't necessarily need that unless, like, I have written content for my agency to some degree. I don't use it, but it's more for client stuff. And then I have stuff that I use that is like workbooks and videos for my
Well,
training sessions.
the
So
thing is, those are all already copyrighted, essentially.
okay.
So copyright used to require a certain amount of legal hoop jumping, and that's why, like, famously, for example, It's a Wonderful Life,
Mhm.
um, like one of the spools or copies or something didn't have the copyright notice on it, and so it wasn't copyrighted. And then, since it wasn't copyrighted, it was just public domain right away. And then, you know, television stations looking for content were like, well, here's 2 hours that we can put on, we don't have to pay anybody for. And
Right.
Frank Capra and Jimmy Stewart, people know who they are, they're good at with their job, let's use that 2 hours. It's not like that anymore. If you grab a piece of poster board and spray paint something on it, it's copyrighted, like that's yours now. eh, so
It's a lot more different rules and regulations now in the 2020s than it is in prior to.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So particularly getting started or small scale businesses, copyright's going to be your friend, because it's already being your friend. Written materials that you produce are your copyrights. um, as you expand and grow, um, getting a lawyer to put together your IP strategy, getting trademarks that you can put on things that would give you more exclusivity, those sorts of things become more important. Um, Another possibility in the service area could be trade secrets, um, where you might have some kind of secret sauce. This would get more important if you're sort of a consulting agency, and so you're training up people to provide some service, and you don't want those people to, say, immediately be able to leave and go into competition with you. You could set up
Okay.
trade secrets of, like, I personally know how to do this thing better than almost anybody else. I will teach you how to do it, but you have to
Agree to do a non-disclosure and
yeah,
all
yeah,
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
and
I
yeah,
had that. I had that. I even have a non-disclosure agreement with anybody I work with on my Liberty Virtual Solutions business or any of my businesses, because I have a no compete law clause in every single one of those agreements for that reason.
well, yeah, and a critical part of trade secrets, if you get to that point, is that you have to be making some sort of an effort to keep it a secret. Like, you're not
Right.
allowed to spray paint your secret sauce on the outside of your house and then just say it's a trade secret. Like nobody's allowed to look at that. Like that's not how it works. My situation is really different because what I'm talking about is this sort of specific way to do things that requires physical support and computation to work at, and operates in a way that is publicly obvious in its operation.
Okay.
Um,
Is this part of your
so
networking that we're gonna discuss?
no, I'm talking about like why I'm
The
doing
patent, okay,
patents, and
gotcha.
patents aren't sort of the right thing for most people. So what I would need for IP is to protect something that cannot be kept secret, um, and is an operation. So there's a lot of different ways that you could write the code that did it. And so copywriting one or even several dozen of those ways wouldn't stop somebody from writing completely different code that still did the same critical thing. Um, and so that's where I get to patent. But yeah, patent patent's someplace you kind of get driven to when you meet its criteria and nothing else meets your criteria.
No, that makes sense. We talked a lot about on the show about patents because and trademarks because I think that's just one topic we haven't really discussed much. I think we had one person early on that talked a little bit about patenting because she was patenting something for a purse idea, like just a piece of a purse. So she was able to do something creative and she got it patented and launched the product and was quite thrilled that she was able to do that for herself. Um, but I feel like it's important because people don't understand those differences. And that's why I was asking you a bunch of extra questions, because I feel like it was important to talk because we talked a lot about marketing on the show. But the key thing is knowing what patent and trade secrets and copyright is important to keep protect your business. And there's so many ways in which we can do that. So thank you for sharing all those great tips too. So we're now on to the next fun adventure of our show, which is about the networking piece. So and that's really really key in marketing. In the marketing strategies is knowing the proper way or at least another way to how you could connect with others. So I'm going to ask you the next question related to that, which is how do you make a new connection? What is your strategy for that?
Well, propinquity and serendipity, for one thing, sort of who's around and who I get introduced to is a big part of any of it. But that's not enough. So you've got to put some energy into it as well. And so coming up with and sort of testing uh, uh, effectively cold calls, is I think critical. You got to actually get up and go out and interfere in somebody else's life, to see whether or not the door's open or closed.
I like
Um,
the quiet disruptions, so to speak.
yeah. I
A
mean,
soft, it's
it,
like a soft way of there's a soft way of doing it too. So anyway, that's beside the point. But no, I agree. It's you really have to go out there and introduce yourself and know how to introduce yourself properly. Is that right?
yeah. Well, I came across this thing. It's sort of a meme, but it really works. And it's the Princess Bride approach to introductions, and it's from that famous quote: "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." And the point is that there's four stages in sort of any greeting messaging that you want to turn into a relationship. And they're all on distinct display in this quote, which everybody can remember. So the first step, hello, is a polite greeting. Um, and that's going to be based on your culture. Maybe you'd use different words, but I use hello myself. My name is Inigo Montoya. So you introduce yourself.
My name is Marie Mason. I'm not the other ladder. I'm not in the Princess Bride movie.
Right.
And you're Noah Healy. So
Yeah,
we
I'm
would
Noah
introduce your
Healy.
name. You would introduce your
Yeah,
name,
introduce
basically.
yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a recreational mathematician, and
Mhm.
I've got this patent pending designed to supersede commodity markets. Um, you killed my father. So you establish a relationship, what existing relationship you have. And the thing is, you always have an existing relationship. Um, uh, you've either, you found this person's existence and contact information somehow. So did somebody else give you their name? Stick that in there. Are you just out on a networking site that they're out on? Well, you're both on this networking site. Do a little research, find out what they're into. Don't send messages to people that aren't into anything that you're into. You know, comment on something they posted, or something else that looks relevant.
Build
And
the
then
relationship, basically.
yes, yeah. Where is your existing relationship? It doesn't have to be. In fact, it won't be at the level of mutual awareness. It's sort of one-sided, but there should be something there. Tell them what it is. And then finally, you killed my father, prepare to die. So prepare
That's a
to
little
die.
dramatic.
Yes. Where do you, what's the goal? Give them a call to action, establish what the future will hold. Um, the entire point of a relationship is that there's going to be more coming up. So what more are you looking for?
What
And
is the next step? What's the
yeah,
end result? I was actually just
yes,
saying that prior to our discussion in the 3 tips, and that is, always keep the end in mind when you're doing a marketing funnel, or when you're trying to, go from the initial introduction to having them work with you. It's all developing that know, like, and trust factor, and building that awareness and building that connection. And that's really what you're trying to say too, is building a connection.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like a tennis volley, or something else. If you don't have a next step, if you don't have something for them to do, then it's just over at that point. Um, and so I send out those sorts of messaging. The pitch I sent to you to get this podcast was built on those 4 steps.
It was very an interesting approach, I tell you.
Yes. uh, and that's what you do. You have to fill that out for yourself. Very few of us are, you know vengeance seeking Spaniards who are the world's greatest swordsmen. But you're
Thankfully.
you. Yes, you're you. You've got whatever it is you're doing. And you put that on display and find out what happens.
No, that's brilliant. And that's an encouraging method and strategy in order to build that know, like, and trust factor. Because I think it's important. It's so many times I see messages come into social media where they're sitting there and trying to sell you on their idea before they get to know you. And the key thing with what we're trying to tell you is build that connection first and establish how you know each other, and then go into your introduction pitch. Keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it clear, and you're going to get a lot better results. And you're also going to build relationships, and you want to be able to sound like a real human being and not an automated person, not an automated machine. So if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Well, and also, accept enormous attrition. I've sent out tens of thousands of these messages. I've gotten thousands of responses that have turned into hundreds of conversations, dozens of which got to second conversations, and I've got 4 people in sort of the preliminary stages of action. Um, that's a big drop off. Some people are a lot better than I am and don't drop off nearly that steeply. Um, but everybody, nobody has every pitch turn into a sale.
Right. Especially
And
not on the initial
oh
conversation.
yeah,
It
right,
might
yeah.
take a few touch points and a few discussions to really dig deep and find out what their needs are and if you guys are a perfect fit to work together. And that's really what these discussions are all about is
Well, exactly. And the thing to accept is that not only is that true, it's going to take an enormous number of those first pitches just to get to some number of
discussions,
multi-stage discussions,
right?
because lots of people are going to talk to you once, and then that'll be the end of things.
And you're not looking for everyone to say yes. You're looking for the right fit because it's that's what we use the term as. We're calling it a filter, and we're filtering people that are into our funnel, and we're also filtering people out. And it's okay if they filter out because then we know we don't have to waste time with them. And that's what my encouragement is you don't want to give up so soon when you're doing this networking, because it takes time and it's because you're creating that relationship, and relationships, as we well know, take time to develop, whether it's in business or personal or whatever method, process is, direction you're taking it. um, and right now we're mostly focusing on the business side of things, but to build a proper relationship, for example, I actually landed a client recently because I talked to him like a real human being. We had a few touch points on social media. We scheduled a call last week. It led to another call, which is more of a sales call this week. And we took time with that. We didn't rush through it. And we just kept building that relationship and rapport enough where he built enough trust with me to want to work with me. And that's the process that we've been trying to show you today. So really quick, we got two more questions and then we got to end the show. Can you believe it? Oh my gosh, it's amazing how quick this goes by. So I guess the last question I wanted to ask you in regarding to last, I think there's a couple of questions. What is it that what do you learn from somebody when you're connecting with others? I mean, is there something that you go on a deeper dive with, or I mean, what is it that you learn from that experience?
Well, to circle back to where we started, one of the most important things that strangers give you is feedback on how you're doing with your explanation.
Right.
Um, Probably the sort of first and most important thing to actually make it worth putting all this effort in the first place is to actually have your own goal. Um, and and so for me, it's explaining this brand new idea to people. Um, uh, Sort of ultimately, specifically, people that can bring it into life and existence. But generally, uh, we all are going to be living on this planet. We've got an economic system that's broken. We need an economic system that isn't broken, and knowledge of how this economic system that isn't broken can work. That needs to be disseminated as well. And so it's only through sort of trial and error and making those connections that you can get the feedback you need to see whether or not uh, one style of explanation or another is working better. Um, and so that journey of learning, I think, is a really underrated part of the process, because whether it's product or service, it's insufficient for you to be doing it yourself. Other people have to be doing it too. And the only way to figure out what other people's problems are, is to talk to them.
You do have to go and do a deeper dive and not just ask yes or no questions. You have to get out questions that make them think and make you give you like more than just a yes or no answer. You have to have really key questions that focus on deeper dive answers. But that's just and I cannot think of what the name of that is. I don't know if you remember, but there's a word for that. But the next question, we can always go back to that in another show. But the next one is what keeps you motivated, I guess, in your business and building your business?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the work that is the downside. There are some people that enjoy doing this. Most people don't. I am one of the ones that doesn't. So you need to have a reason to be doing this in the first place. And so for me, it's just the compelling nature of the problem, and how it is and will personally affect me as the markets keep falling apart.
You're a problem solver. That's your secret sauce.
Um, more of I'm just like not suicidal. So we've got this system that I get my food and clothes from, and I need food and clothes, and the system's breaking, and I've got a fix for it. So I've got to
You're
keep trying to get
solution
my
oriented. You're solution
yeah
oriented. Yeah.
I've got to keep trying to get my finger stuck in the dike, because I live on the other side of the dike, and I need it not to leak. Um, but but you know if you're in a situation where you have a different sort of motivation or business model, it might not be sufficient. If Like you're talking about the woman who had her purse design, if she's in that because she wants to turn that into a business and her purse innovation doesn't have a market fit, then she will and she should eventually determine that people don't want to buy her purse with the thing on it, and she'll stop. um, on the other hand,
It could
if
be the
that
opposite.
yeah,
It
if
could
the
be a
market
great
fit
success.
yeah, if the market fit is there and that's what she's there for, then she should keep going, and hopefully in that case that is what she'll be there for, and she will be able to keep going, and people will have these better purses in that case. um, but I've seen cases, and I've certainly heard of cases of it sort of going every which way, where people are successful and they hate it and so they stop, or you know unsuccessful but they love it, so they sort of drive themselves into the gutter. um, you gotta sort of make sure that what's getting you out of the bed in the morning matches up with your ability to get out of bed in the morning, or else you're gonna run yourself down.
Yeah, that's true. And you really have to make sure you stay motivated and remember the why, the reason why you build your business is important too. Because like you said, that will keep you motivated and get you out of bed. So, and me just being able to help my clients and my students and the people reading my books and listening to my podcasts, um, being able just to make a difference in somebody's life is what keeps me motivated every day. So it's not always the tasks, they're just to keep those are busy work, but it's really connecting with others, I think would be my key point there. But thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I love how you painted this action step about the introduction, and I'm going to recap this real quick, and then you have a gift for our audience. So and I want to just recap it. It's a 4-step process of how to introduce yourself, which is you're saying hello, introducing your name, and then establishing a connection, and then establishing the expectations with the relationship. And you gave such a great example earlier, so there's no need to repeat that. But it was a great example from a movie. And no, you don't have to be that dramatic, but it does illustrate quite beautifully. So my next question is, and the last one for the day is, do you have a gift you want to share to our audience? And what
uh,
is it?
yeah, so there is an explanation video for the idea that I have, Coordinated Discovery Market, CDM. It's up on YouTube, and I'd like to share that with your listeners if you'd like to learn more about how the economy functions, what's broken about it, and how it could work better. Please go check that out. And
Is it under Noah Healy or is it under your business name? What's the name of your channel?
It's actually on my channel name, and my channel name is Nikki Haflinger, which
Oh, wow.
is an alias that I use sometimes. Nikki Haflinger is the best fictional hacker that's ever been written, actually. It's from a book called The Shockwave Rider, and it posits a future very much like exactly what we're living in, although significantly worse. He anticipated computer viruses, um, and a total lack of privacy, and his protagonist um, has the ability to basically instinctively program computers. And so from any phone terminal in the world, he can write himself an entirely new identity.
Okay, perfect. No, that's awesome. So I want to really thank you, Noah, for taking your time today and sharing great, valuable tips to help our audience grow their business and themselves on the Marketing Mindset Mastery podcast. Trying to remember to switch it from what it was. So anyway, long story short, your topic today was really about the like a princess networking format. I mean, is there, you want to say what that one was again?
Um, well, just sort of how to make connections. Let me see. What would we
How to
actually?
make connections.
Yeah, it's like facing your fears and making to to make connections, I think was our topic title. And yeah, I
Right.
mean, you gotta break out of your shell to get into the world.
You really do. I agree. No, that's true. But yeah, and there's so facing your fears and how to make connections was a great topic. And we did a deep dive also on how to patent your and when to patent it and also when to um a product or a service and also when to copyright it because it's important to protect your content. And I've heard so many stories over the years where people have thought of a concept and then someone stole it and they got angry because it was stolen, but then they had to revise it so that it could be still different in theirs. But then they got smart and patented or they did copywriting. And so now that things are out there and like my book is now copyrighted automatically. So we do have a certain degree of protection that we didn't have when 20 or 30 years ago. So anyway, but that was a brilliant process that you took us through on the patenting process and copywriting. So thank you for that. I do want to encourage you to take advantage of our offers on the Marketing Mindset Mastery YouTube channel. That's where we will be posting Noah's gift. And we will also be eventually getting everything up on the website. It's been a slow, painstakingly process. So, but eventually all of our YouTube, all of our podcasts will eventually be on my website. I'm learning a process, so it does take time to learn, right? So just bear with me. But right now I can go directly to our channel and collect everything there. So, and you are going to be super, super glad to take advantage of Noah's gift, which is to actually go to his YouTube channel and check out his alternative design for community markets through the patenting pending approach. So definitely a viable product and definitely a viable process. So I encourage you to go there. You can also connect with him on his website at Coordisc.com. So you're also welcome to reach out if you have any questions or want to just touch base, right? So we'll throw that out there to the world. And my offer to you every week is don't forget that we do have a Marketing Mindset Mastery shop. And during the 21-22 school year, which will go through the first part of June, we're going to be selling school backpacks. And for every $45 backpack we will send a lucky teacher in the US a $5 gift card to put towards classroom supplies, because let's face it, as much as they earn in their they may have a budget, they always need more supplies. And with the way things have been going in the last couple of years, we want to just give back to our teachers and the community and thank them for being in, most of them for being in person this year. So we want to be able to get back to that community and reach out and help them out. And once you order the backpack, just on our libertyvirtualsolutions.com/shop page, reach out to me on my website in the contact section on the libertyvirtualsolutions.com, and then let us know where we can send the gift card to them. So it could be in anywhere in the US or Canada, and then we'll be opening worldwide in the next school year. So please let us know, and we would love to send the lucky teacher a great gift. So join us next week for a great episode on tips on ideas and how to make your marketing and mindset work for you, and to learn how to set up your business for success. And we do stream on our YouTube channel every Thursday at 11 a.m. So please make sure you like, share, and hit that subscribe and notification button so that you don't miss another show. And please let us know where you're from and what business do you have as well. We'd love to learn about you and how. And if you have any questions, please let us know that too on the comment on YouTube. So until next time, I'm your host, Bree Mason, with our guest, Noah Healy, and we're going to say goodbye now for the Marketing Mindset Mastery Podcast, and that ends this week's show. Y'all have a great week.